Hello, friends and gamers, and welcome to what I'm going to be calling the Tabletop Tacticians podcast. I think that's what I'm going to call it for now. So this is episode 6 that I'm doing, and I have Wintermute here as the fellow that we're going to be discussing it with. And for those of you that don't know, this is just basically where we get together and we talk about, kind of ramble freely about certain topics without too much, with some level of focus, but without pre-prepared notes, extensive notes or anything. It's unscripted, just kind of a rambling conversation. There's Wintermute. Hello, Wintermute.
Well, that's broken. Okay, so yeah. Today's topic is going to be it's going to be critical. It's going to be critical.
Yeah.
It's going to be critical of a current way things are handled in version 3. So I'm just prefacing it with that. And today's topic, we are going to talk about the Italian victory conditions.
I gotta say it's the Italian problem. I think that's what I would call it.
Okay, yeah, the Italian problem. I think that's probably a better way to put it. Now, I'll let you define what the core issue of the Italian problem is.
Well, I think there's a few. First of all, the biggest one that stands in people's mind is the victory conditions that Italy could achieve its victory points without even firing a shot. On top of that, it can send its entire treasury each and every turn to its ally, Germany, each and every turn, barring $2 of income that it can't send, and barring, send its entire treasury. So therefore, it could have all the benefits of participating in the war without participating in the war. Now, the only counter argument to that one is, well, the technology wartime economy, they don't get the benefit of that. Okay, so yeah, you're right. The one dice roll of wartime economy, they miss out on. But everything else, they get the entire benefit of being at war without being at war, while still projecting that same amount of threat in the Mediterranean, tying down a sufficient number of British units. But I think before we get into this, we should make some qualifiers too. This has been a topic that we've been wanting to discuss for a little while.
Yeah, this has actually been on our list of one of the things we wanted to discuss since almost day one.
Pretty much, yeah.
It just, now some of the things we choose to talk about a lot of it is just what we feel like talking about. And I don't apologize for that, and sometimes some of the topics that we want to discuss are triggered by, a game going on that we're watching, or the last time we played and something that kind of rose to the top as an issue or something to think about. So, but this one in particular, because obviously I'm playing in Crimson Tide right now. Italy is on some level playing the way that Italy can be played. And I want to make it clear, there's nothing wrong with that. Play by the rules. I've said this a million times before.
Oh, yeah.
I play by the rules. If the rules say you can do it, do it. If there's a problem with the rules, they need to be fixed. But it's not up to the players playing the game to fix the rules. It is up to the people who put the rules out there and ask us to buy the product to fix them. And in both of our opinions, Italy has a lot of problems in the way it is currently incorporated into version 3.
Yeah. And this is an ongoing problem, like you said, not just in this Crimson Tide game, but in the previous game we've played, in the one before that, in the one before that. It's been an ongoing problem for basically the entire length of this game as soon as people realize that this is a feature, right? So that's been part of it. Once people start to focus on the end game as opposed to having fun with Italy, but actually winning the game, then it's become the meta for Italy to do. And it's the meta that works. And honestly, it's like if I was playing Italy, I would do the same thing because why the hell not, right?
Right. And some people will. And sometimes when you see that there's a potential issue with a game, people will immediately kind of put out counter arguments. Well, okay, well, if you're doing that, then you're kind of ignoring this. And that is good. However, if it repeatedly happens where doing it this way is clearly the best way in 90% of the games, or 100% of the games, or even 70% of the games, well, then it's something that really does need to be looked at.
Yeah.
And those counter arguments are legitimate, but when they finally get tested in game after game after game, and you start to see that one strategy kind of dominates all the others, well, that's something that needs to be brought up to the community and said, this is a problem.
Yeah.
And some people look at that and go, well, if you're going to do that, then you're taking it to an extreme. Well, but that is a fair criticism of any rule system, any game. Sometimes taking it to the extreme allows you to break the game.
Yeah.
and play around all the negatives that you would have to do if you didn't do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I feel Italy is right now.
Yeah.
It's too easy for them to achieve their victory goals.
That's right, yeah.
Without, and there's very little downside.
So let's cover
Other
this.
than it being boring, but that's not really a valid argument in my opinion.
Well, yeah. And so wait, there's one more counter argument that person can say is like, well, okay, so as you pointed out too, is like, if Italy does this, then Britain can do this, and therefore kind of neuter themselves. So one could say, if Italy stays passive the entire game, Britain doesn't need to focus any attention in the Mediterranean and put more emphasis in putting pressure on Germany. Well, that argument, in my opinion, doesn't really work because you don't know that Italy's going to be out of the war the entire game. You have no clue if they're going to go to the war next turn or the turn after that. So you still have to put emphasis in defense of Cairo. You have to put emphasis in defense of Gibraltar, because you lose Gibraltar, you effectively lose a good way of reinforcing Cairo. Once Gibraltar's done, Cairo's effectively done too. Not quite, hand in hand, but they go fairly close together, and Gibraltar's really hard to take back, right? So it's like you have the benefit of putting pressure on the British, and the British can't use that to go do something else. They have to each turn expectantly wait that the Italians might next turn do something. So the counter argument, well, if Italy stays out of the war, Britain can do this. You have no guarantee that Italy will stay out of the war. And now another counter argument could be, well, you could bluff the Italians by being like, okay, I'm going to withdraw some forces there, and then that will tempt them into going to war. And then once they go to war, you smack them down and take them out. Well, a good Italian player will look at that and be like, okay, is the advantage, the British have removed some units from Gibraltar. Can I capture Gibraltar? Okay, and then if they capture Gibraltar, then they've actually gone they've done fantastic, and they probably should have gone to war, and they might end up winning out anyways. And so that bait that you offered to the Italians, you've given it to them, and now they've succeeded, and now it's going to be immensely hard to take it back. So I don't think that's a good counter argument either. You can't bluff the Italians out, because the two pieces of things that you need, Cairo and Gibraltar, are too worthwhile holding on to that you don't want to offer it as bait to the Italians, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's risky. It's incredibly risky bait. Incredibly risky bait. So that's a valid.
Like a fortified, a city territory in the mountains, that's huge. And then Cairo itself is worth, I think it's worth $1, but then all the bonuses it gives to everybody, I think it ends up being like $5 or something like that. It's huge.
It's I want to say $2 to France. I don't even count that, but it's $3 to Britain every turn.
Yeah. So that's.
But more importantly, total, right? it's that direct route.
Yeah.
It's that direct route into the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that I can move ships directly from Aden to Sea Zone 79 in a single turn is huge, and not have to go around the Horn of Africa, or the not the Horn. Well, the south end of Africa.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's huge. That alone, even if it didn't give you any wartime bonus economy or income, that alone is worth holding on to.
Yeah, by grabbing Gibraltar or Cairo, you're strangling East Africa, for the most part, and that gives the Italians such a big opportunity to do other stuff. So you can't bluff the Italians. The British can't risk losing Gibraltar and Cairo, so they're not going to offer the bluff anyways, and they have to expect each turn that the Italians might go to war next turn. So that is the problem with Italy on that part of thing. Is there any other problem? The treasury aspect, is that another part of the problem? That they could give a bunch of their income to the Germans? I think so. A fighter each turn to Germany, that's huge. Yeah, I think that's huge.
Yeah. Now, but then again, they don't have to. Okay, well, let's actually stop right there, and actually let's take a look at the specific wording of their actual victory conditions.
Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's
and then that maybe will kind of put things into focus.
Yeah.
Now remember, they don't have to be a member of the Axis alliance to score these victory conditions for the Axis alliance.
Yeah. So first of all, give us a grand picture of how many victory points per faction. Is it 21?
18, I believe.
18 each.
4,
Is
5,
that
6,
including
7,
the victory cities
9,
thing?
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. 18 objective victory points, and that does not factor in any victory cities.
Okay. So, all right. Go ahead.
So Italy can bring 4 to the table. Okay. So the first one is expand the empire. Score 1 victory objective for each new land zone Italy possesses at the end of the game that Italy did not possess at the start of the game, any value. Normally this is tied to, you have to have IPP value, so it has to actually be a territory that is worth something. Now, let me do preface this before we go any further. It has already been stated by the designers that Italy's victory conditions are easier to achieve pound for pound when compared to other nations, because Italy is just overall a lot smaller and has less ability to just bring a ton of IPP and units to bear on a problem. That is an absolutely valid way of designing them and looking at them when you design them. Absolutely. I don't fault that at all. I still say, though, that the execution did not land. It landed in such a way that it created this bizarre situation where Italy never needs to go to war.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, well, but Nation X, their own motivations to score those victory points is going to drive them to war anyway. Okay, that's true of some nations, but not of Italy.
Not of Italy, yeah.
And let's explicitly explain why that is. First off, Abyssinia. Okay, Abyssinia is usually very easy for Italy to win.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Now, the Allies have options to reinforce Abyssinia in order to stymie the Italian efforts. Mm-hmm. Now, is that a guarantee that the Allies will completely? No, it's actually very easy for Italy to ramp up its production for the first couple turns of the game. They can drop colonial infantry down there. They can drop militia and then upgrade it the following turn. They can build a transport turn 1 and then start shipping troops down. They can outpace anything the Allies can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then they just need to win this closed combat situation.
That's the only combat they actually have to win in the entire game, realistically, right? And it's worth 1 victory point. So that's worthwhile. And they bring in a little under 1/3 of the, 4 out of, did we say 18? 16?
Yeah, 4 out of 18.
4 out of 18. So they bring in a chunk of victory points. Not huge, but a chunk of the victory points they bring in. So putting all their effort, and it's extensive amount of money that they could put into this. That's the only combat they actually have to win. They're probably going to do it. And France would have to put tons of effort into it, as well as Russia tons of effort into it to match whatever the Italians pour into it.
Britain and France probably can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Because really at that point they can only do, unless you're going to, because I don't have the map in front of me, but
it's
I'm
a
pretty minor port with the rail from the French territory that feeds in. So if France is going to upgrade that to a major port, I want to say for 4 IPP or something like that. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. You're already committing quite a bit. Okay, now you can start dumping a ton of money into Abyssinia, but you can still only drop 1 unit a turn.
Yeah.
Are you really going to drop a fighter a turn in Abyssinia as the French?
No.
You can't even afford that to start the game with.
Yeah.
Your best bang for your buck is probably going to be a mountain infantry, which is still $4 a turn. Well, that's usually like roughly two thirds of the French income right off the bat. And then Britain is already have a zillion things to do. Russia has a zillion things to do.
Yeah.
So now all three of that, there's no guarantee you're going to get Russia even in on this.
Yeah.
The Russian player might just go, I'm sorry, I understand what you guys are going for. Yeah. I understand why this is important, in the grand scheme of things, but I do not feel I want to invest in this.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's a fair thing to say, and it's perfectly reasonable for the British player to say the same thing. So already you're dumping a huge ton of resources in this to stymie 1 victory point from the Italians, which they can still probably manage to overwhelm.
Probably. Yeah.
Okay. And remember, they can build a transport, put a plane on that transport along with an infantry, move it down there, unload them. By turn 3 or 4, then they drop again. They can start dropping two colonials down there a turn. They're going to overwhelm whatever your land lease.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You might inflict quite a number of casualties, but all they have to do is win.
Yeah.
Remember, that's all they have to do is win. Yeah. Whether they've got 1 guy sitting there when the dust settles or 10, does that matter? Not with what we're talking about, and not if you're going to play Italy this way. So there's Abyssinia.
Yeah, Albania is just a walk-in,
Albania is just a simple annexation. They just walk a guy in. They don't have to fight. There's nothing. Yeah. There's literally, if Italy never declares war, once they have Abyssinia and Albania, there's literally no way to take those 2 victory points away from Italy.
That's right. Yeah.
Because the Allies are not allowed to attack Italy until Italy attacks another nation that was in a belligerent action.
Yeah. Exactly.
So there's that.
There's that.
The other one, dominance. Now, some of these victory conditions are going to parallel German victory conditions. Now, I will state this right now, just as a way of kind of putting it out there. I do not like the German victory conditions in this game. they deserve their own video. But the ones that parallel the Italian one are important to talk about. And that's the Spanish Civil War.
Right.
Okay. The fact that the Italians and the Germans can, once they win the Spanish Civil War, and I'm not counting the 1939 scenario.
Yeah.
I've never considered that. I don't think it's a scenario worth playing, not because it's poorly designed. It's just the way it is, the way it's set up. There's no way for Germany to actually pull off what it needs to do in a they basically, you start at war, but you can't actually go to war.
Right.
It just is not a physically, Germany is not set up to go to war the way a competent player would set it up if they started in 1936. So I've never played the 39 scenario. I have no desire to, and I'm only bringing it up to clarify. I don't factor it into any of this.
Yeah.
Oh, before I go any further, did you have anything you wanted to add about Expand the Empire? Or do you think we did all
no, I think we did a good. Yeah.
Right.
We did good.
So dominance. This is score 1 victory objective if the nationalists won the Spanish Civil War, 1936 scenario, or if all 6 land zones in continental Spain are Axis possessed, 1939 scenario.
Yeah,
so if you play the 1939 scenario, you can take those points away. But if you play the 1936 scenario, once they've won the Spanish Civil War, that's a victory point for Italy that you can literally wipe Italy off the board and Germany off the board, and you actually still have 2 victory points. Does not compute. Honest to God, does not compute. I don't understand that. I truly don't understand that, why it was worded that way. So again, those are almost, freebie points.
Yeah, they are.
There are options the Allies have to help stymie the German and Italian aggression in the Spanish Civil War. There are options the Russians have to do the same thing, but it's no guarantee. And quite frankly, I know the current meta is the German player will just send 2 fighters or two dive bombers right off the bat. Turn 1, dive bomber. Turn 2, dive bomber. Italy, here's a mountain infantry, here's a mountain infantry, or an artillery. And Italy supplies a couple ground units, Germany supplies the air power, and then they just sort of, start to slowly steamroll all of Spain. Now, there's a lot of variables in there as far as
there are. So it's like the Russian player can't afford a fighter right off the bat. I think his income is $6 at the start of the game, $8, something small, anyways. So 8. So he can't send the whole thing in there, especially if he's working on Abyssinia at the same time. So let's exclude Abyssinia and just say the Spanish Civil War, because that's worth 2 victory points right there. To the Axis, right? If Germany and 1 for Italy. So in this case, they send a unit over there, but it's 1 unit against 2 Axis units showing up. That's pretty strong to deal with, right? That's tough to deal with. Now, it is allowed for the French or the British to send a unit in there, and I haven't seen that meta explored very much.
They can only upgrade a militia. I don't think they can send a unit.
I thought recently they changed it that they can send a unit.
Maybe there's something in the errata. Okay. I'll admit I do not have the errata memorized.
Right. No, that's right. Yeah, I have it. I think it's worthwhile to look into it, but I'll take a look at it in just one moment here. But yeah, it's very difficult to do anything about that. It's quite challenging to even do anything. So, Lend-Lease. This is on the Great British one, version 35. Great Britain, to Spanish factions, yes, only 1 allied sender per turn. So you can send 1 unit from Britain and France to a Spanish faction.
Is that in the errata?
No, that's in the actual national reference sheet.
Because if you read the actual Spanish Civil War section, I believe they're limited to what they send.
Okay. Because here it says they could send 1 unit. If they can't send 1 unit, 1 ally. Well, it doesn't say 1 unit. 2 Spanish factions, yes. It just simply says yes. Okay, so
while we're on this is a good point. Okay, Spanish Civil War. The Allies may send, so this is directly from the rulebook. The Allies may send Lend-Lease supplies, brackets, upgrade 1 militia to 1 infantry price 2 IPP to both factions. Only 1 allied power may send supplies per turn.
I see.
Now, this is directly from the rulebook.
Yeah.
Now, again, I do not pretend to have the errata memorized.
Yeah.
In some ways, I feel like I need to go through and make an annotated version of the rule book. Because the errata is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
It is. Yeah. Sure.
So that it is honestly difficult to keep track of.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you go to the rules to read. Okay, now I got to read through every single question in the errata to make sure that wasn't. And this is nobody's fault per se.
Exactly,
This is a problem with errata sometimes.
And it's a complex game, so it makes sense that issues kind of pop up that were kind of unforeseen, and it has to go in the errata. We understand that, but for me as a Russian player, like, I'm not going to be sending militia to Spain. I'm going to be sending something more affordable. Something a little bit more beefy with some more offensive capability, right? So the allies aren't going to be able to upgrade one of my militia unless I'm lucky on one of my dice rolls, to actually get militia. So there's not too much point in the allied emphasis there. So it's going to be one Russian, say, infantry. Infantry is the best. So mountain infantry maybe. One Russian mountain infantry versus one Italian mountain infantry and a German fighter. That's going to be hard to keep up with. And you're probably going to lose the Spanish Civil War. And there's very little you can do about it unless you're lucky on the dice rolls to get reinforcements. But they could be just as lucky on theirs as well. So at the end of the day, that again seems a fairly easy victory objective for the Italians to achieve, unless the Germans and the Italians misplay that fight, which they usually don't. Usually we're coming at this with the expectation. We're making a steel man argument saying we're dealing with competent players. We're not dealing with newbies who don't know how the Spanish Civil War is. We're talking about players who have a few games under their belt and know what they need to do with an eye on the prize here at the end of the game. So,
and I will preface this with another statement. I have had people tell me that in their game, the Comintern routinely wins the Spanish Civil War because the Germans and Italians don't send anything.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah. And
that's news to me.
Yeah.
I can't imagine why you would play that way. Honest to God cannot. But we are making a solid assumption that the German and the Italian players can get those victory points relatively easy in comparison to what the Allies and the Cominterns can do to secure that front.
In my last game I played, second last game I played, so it was a deal struck between the Axis and the Comintern, and they said, you can have Spain. So things like that do happen, and they struck an alliance between the Axis and the Comintern and stuff like that, right? So there are times when you will see Republican Spain win, but if they're both trying to fight to the maximum capability with the eye on the prize of getting those victory points, more times than not the Axis will win. More times than not.
I feel so. And of course, dice are dice. And,
dice are dice. Yeah, they're dice.
So that's kind of how we feel about that particular victory condition. Again, one that Germany can get and Italy can get, which locks in 2 victory points. And again, Italy still does not need to directly go to war.
And also, I think it should be pointed out too that this is locked in. It doesn't matter if later on America declares war on Spain, captures all of Spain, captures Madrid. Those points, once the Spanish Civil War is won, it's called Triumph of Fascism for the Italians. Once that Spanish Civil War is won by the nationalists, they get those points forever until the end of the game. So it's locked in for Italy, locked in for Germany. So that's worth noting as well. Yeah.
So, okay, I think we've beaten that one to death.
Yeah, I think so.
So now we've got the Mediterranean one.
Yeah.
So score 1 victory objective if Italy has twice as many capital ships in the Mediterranean as the Allies, or possess Gibraltar, Eastern Egypt, and Malta. So now this one can be contested by the Allies. Now, what do the Allies have to do? They have to prevent Italy from being able to reach twice as many capital ships. Okay, now, how difficult is that versus how easy it is?
This one's this is one that the Allies can contest for sure.
But what do they have to do to contest it? They have to move in. But Italy, let's right off the bat, Italy starts with a single battleship, right? I can't remember. Do they already have a battleship on the build tracker, or is that just a heavy cruiser?
A heavy cruiser.
Heavy cruiser. Okay. So so what do you do with Italy? You constantly roll for improved construction, and then once you reach you save up some cash. Yeah. Once you reach improved construction, you start building for $8 every turn 2 battleships. Or if you are giving away a lot of your money as Lend-Lease, you just build 1 battleship a turn.
Yeah.
And then you just move it along for $4 a spot, and then you drop another one, and you drop another one, and you drop another one, and you drop another one. Now, at that point, by the time Italy reaches that point, I think it is fair to say that the way the game is going to play out is starting to settle. And at this point, Italy can do that just to force the Allies to put capital ships where they don't want or need them.
Yeah.
So again, this one can be contested, but let me say the fact that it exists, that there is a possibility that the Italians never have to go to war to achieve their 4th victory point is still a problem in and of itself. The likelihood of that happening is absolutely worth, kind of going back and forth about. But the fact that it can happen means it will happen. By sheer probability, it's going to happen in some games. And is that really a fun game to play? Where Italy scores 4 victory points for the Axis without ever, Italy itself, we won't include the one for Germany, but Italy scores 4 victory points out of 18 without ever having to go to war. I really don't think that's a right way. I don't think that's the best design, the best way to have Italy designed.
That's right.
It's not, especially because I think that's the meta. I think that should be the meta as the Italian player. Because quite frankly, if you go to war, you risk losing more points than you could have if you don't go to war, even if you're only at 3. Yeah. Because your 2 territories are safe. Yeah. And how easy are those 2 territories to lose? Well, Abyssinia is not that terrible, not that difficult to lose because of where it's located. Yeah. And what tends to happen, I feel, in Africa is Italy makes an initial push, and then the British and the French start dropping guys, and they push back, and then they eventually take those territories from Italy. Eventually. Yeah. And then Albania is, how hard is it to take Albania? Well, it depends on how aggressive, we'll just look at Crimson Tide. It's probably actually pretty easy for me to take Albania. Whether I'll keep it or not is another matter. But really, Italy gets Italy basically sits there the entire game, not doing anything, and basically is there protecting. It's still protecting the southern flank or the southern underbelly of Europe without having to do anything. Because let's say the Allies do come in and they make a really strong play to take back Greece or to take back Yugoslavia or knock Vichy out. Well, then the Italians go, well, you know what? We've only got about 3 turns left. So, and they've exposed their fleet. I'm just going to hammer the hell out of them. I'm going to take 1 or 2 key territories with all of my guys, all of my ground forces, all of my naval lift. And you guys won't be able to really take it back because I put so much firepower there. That's right. And I basically, you guys only have 2-3 turns to really counter me at this point. Good luck. And by the time Britain builds something at its factories and ships it over to the Mediterranean or whatever, that eats up 2 turns itself, right? So it's quite the situation. And so I honestly think the best meta for Italy is to never enter the war.
Well, I would say the meta for Italy is simply this: you pretend as if you're going to go to war the very next turn. Each turn, set yourself up. Have Marines ready to go. You have everything ready to go. Like, okay, Britain, just back off 1 inch and I'll go at you, right? And you still keep building, the units and such. Initially, you send a lot of your resources to Germany. Send $10. Once they're in war, give them the upper hand. Send them, 3 fighters total. Boom, 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 right? Of course, first you win the Spanish Civil War. First you win Abyssinia. Then you send your, 3 fighters to Germany. And then after that, start saving your money and save your money, build some units, start building some battleships and such, and keep them on edge and threaten each and every turn that you might do something. And I will say that in your game, the Italian player played it spot on. I think he played it a fantastic game so far, and that's Hilltop Pillbox. He's doing a fantastic job as Italy, and I can't think of him doing anything.
I'll be perfectly willing to say it's frustrating for me as the British player. I would almost rather have him just attack me and even decimate me. But even if he does that, it's like, okay, now the dust is settled. I know what to do.
Exactly.
But at this point, it's still a constant guessing game. And and I'm not saying Italy should be forced to go to war by a certain date. I think giving Italy an opportunity to really, do we want to play this very stand backish and wait just for the right moment to pull the trigger? That is that I appreciate about the way that Italy works in this game. I think that is okay. However, there's other aspects to it which push it over the top, in my opinion, that make Italy a problematic nation in the grand scheme of the game. Does that make sense? Am I explaining it right?
I'm more of a mind that I think Italy should be part of the game, should be part of the fight. You know, there should be some sort of timer on there that maybe once America's at war, then you can do it. Or, you know, if Britain declares war on Italy, then America's peacetime income goes down by 15 IPP or something like that. You know, something of a substantial margin, let's say, right? But there should be that capability where Italy's like, okay, the pressure's on, the pressure's building. And it's up to the allies at that point to be like, do I want to spend 16 IPP to declare war on Italy? I mean, they haven't been too aggressive so far, and you know, maybe I can still win the game without going to war against them, and kind of leave it in their field, right? But I think the capability should be there, and I'm okay with kind of a timer going on there as well for the Italians. But I understand your logic, and you know, I could agree with your way of doing things.
Well, and I don't. And now let me make up my own make a counter argument against myself. Is I don't really want it to be. I still don't feel it should be okay. The last turn of the game, or relatively the last turn of the game, because a lot of people play with variable game ending, and I understand that. But we're getting really close there, and then Italy goes, okay, well, I'll just declare war. Yeah. Just to score my victory points, because now I'm officially, even if you were to rewrite the rules so that Italy is not, if Italy's not part of the Axis, they don't score those victory points. Okay, they wait till the last time. All right, I declare war. They do as much damage as possible to Britain and Free France and whoever's in their sphere, a sphere of threat projection. And then they just kind of go, okay, well, that's done. And now I can just kind of pull back a little bit, turtle up, and there's nothing you can really do to counter me. And even if the game goes on for 2-3 more turns, nobody's still in a good position to deal with me. Yeah. And I basically, there's no downside for waiting. Yeah, that's right. So I don't want the Italian player to constantly be constantly playing this game where I don't get to have any real aggressive fun until the last 2 turns of the game. I don't think that's right either. So there's a lot of factors that go into this.
That's right. Yeah.
But right now, I think you're right. You're right though. The strongest way to play Italy is always make your opponent think you're about to declare war, and this is the turn they're going to pull that trigger, and they're going to just slaughter everything around them and have that really good first turn. So that they always have to be pumping resources and maneuvering to kind of get ready for that. And score your 3 victory points. And if you get to the end of the game and you never have a good turn where you can pull that trigger, well, then you just don't do it. Don't do it. You just let the timer run out and you score your 3 or 4 victory points and call it a game. And I don't really think that's not good. It's not good for the overall game.
Fun, honestly. I don't think that's even that fun. Like, if you had an Italian player who's like, this is me, you know, the fun I'll have is winning the game, but you know what? It's not fun. It's honestly not that fun. Not for the Italian player, not for the everybody more or less. I don't think it's that fun. But that's just me.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And I do expect most people, and I know that some people are going to do things within a game just for fun. And that's okay. I think, especially depending on the group you're playing with, but in a lot of ways, everybody still wants to win. And if you're not really gonna take the game serious, and you're not really gonna try to win, so long as you've got a fair shot at winning. I think I told, when I was originally scheduled to go to the very first game up in Canada, Spring Offensive. Yes. Okay. Spring. I was scheduled to go, but of course COVID hit, and I canceled my flight, and then literally like the next day they closed the borders. And I was like, okay, well, thank goodness. And I talked about I had already decided that if it was not going to threaten my chances of winning, I was going to make a concerted effort with Japan to go invade British Columbia for fun.
Right.
Because we're playing in British Columbia. It's like, all right. British Columbia is Japanese controlled now. You guys got to all start speaking Japanese now. Just to have fun with it. But I wasn't going to do that if that threatened my ability to have a shot at winning the game. Sure. So it's okay to have fun depending on the group and the circumstance you're in. But at the end of the day, I want to win. Winning is fun, and I really don't want to play below my skill level. And again, it's not the player's responsibility to play with an arm tied behind their back, because there's a potential issue with the balance of the game. And in this instance, I think when you look at Italy and taking the entire game into consideration, I do not have a myopic view of the game. Trust me, I've I'm looking at the whole thing. Trust me. I think there are issues with Italy's victory conditions and the way that they're designed. Though I will say Italy is better than version 2.
Yeah.
I remember what Italy was like in version 2, and their economy was only like $7.
Yeah. It was pretty bad.
And so they felt like they could hardly do anything. But at the same time, they had those black shirts, which were
pretty good units.
Way too good.
Yeah.
So it was this bizarre, kind of like, well, I'm exploiting these units that are way too good in the cost benefit ratio for building them, but I can hardly do anything else in the game because I've got no money. So Italy is still funner to play, in my opinion, than it was in version 2. But it's still, when the dust settles, it's like, it's still a very bizarre way to be played.
There's
the
still
way it panning out.
Yeah, there's still some fun to be had with bluffing your opponent. I'll admit that, right? To be like, I'm
okay,
go war now.
I'll give you that.
There's going to be some fun there too, and I've enjoyed that too. Like, what happens if I move my Italian fleet into the Black Sea? What am I thinking now? Oh, now I'm going over here, and you kind of keep your opponent off their keel. But yeah, that's fun for a game or two. But it's not something that I want to.
When do I get to start rolling dice?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is.
When do I get to start drawing blood?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've covered that. Now I want to also state for the record that they get 5 points. We discussed this prior to the video starting. They get 5 victory points because turns out in the rule book it says something differently. But with the victory cities, it says in the rule book you capture victory cities. Captured victory cities give you 1 victory point. Turns out that's wrong, and we have it from a fairly reliable source who says that it's actually not supposed to be captured victory cities. Like any victory cities listed in that list that they have, which is like Calcutta, Sydney, and all these other ones.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so they could actually bring 5 victory points to the table. Now, I'm going to say that here just so that there's no confusion. Also, keep in mind, though, that means that it's not 18 victory points for the Axis. It'll be like 18 plus whatever victory cities they end the game with. So it's going to be a little bit more variable. Plus you have to deduct for any homeland territories that you lose. So there's going to be a certain deduction happening there as well. But yeah, so they can bring 5 victory points to the table, which is a big amount of victory cities.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Okay.
So hopefully now we've thrown out a lot of criticism. Now I have said that, I have thrown out a little bit of possible ways to be that it can be adjusted here and there to maybe put it a little bit back on track. Now that's quite frankly, that's a whole different discussion. How long's our video on now?
35 minutes.
Okay, we still got time. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think solutions? So. I think the first one, expand the empire. All you really have to do is say, score 1 victory objective for each new land zone Italy possesses at the end of the game that has a IPP value, and give them a wartime bonus for holding Ethiopia. Or whatever, right? That could kind of compensate them for the effort that goes to capture Ethiopia. But at the same time, you have to actually go to war to expand your empire aggressively, right? I think that would work out nicely. And that would resolve the first item on that list.
Okay, here's one thing with colonialism that bothers me, and this ties into another German victory condition. And what's coming. It's that Thessaly, which is part of Greece, listed as part of Lebensraum for the German player. Germany did not give 2 jacks about Greece.
They considered it a massive mistake.
It was.
For the Germans.
And they had no desire to go into Greece. That was purely an Italian thing. So why is that listed under Germany as a victory condition? I really, really think that colonialism should be reworked in a way that represents what they actually wanted out of the war. They basically wanted to rebuild or reinstitute the classic Roman Empire. So they should have, probably like Japan and Germany do for various land territories, of these groupings. And so you can score up to X number of victory points. Like, let's say 2 in this case, but there's 4 different groupings.
So
with those 4 different groupings, give them different paths to victory that represent historical things and victory.
So, for example,
war goals.
Yeah, out of a possible victory point scoring of 2, it's like if you control Thessaly and the Peloponnese, that's 1 victory point. If you control, Egypt, then that's another one. And if you control, I don't know, the Middle East or East Africa, then that's another victory point. Something like that in 3 different groupings, so that I have 3 different pathways to victory. Absolutely, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, that would work out quite nicely. Yeah.
So that's the direction I would take. I would look at taking that one.
The Mediterranean dominance one, if you're okay with moving to the next one.
Yeah, right.
Okay, Mediterranean dominance, I'm actually okay with that one. It's okay because it's one of the ones that could be challenged by the British. I will say that you pointed this out in one of our messages, that it's kind of a double standard for the British. Yeah.
Well, here, I've got the British one right in front of me. Now, again, I understand that Italy's victory objectives were easier for Italy are deliberately easier for Italy to achieve. So keep that in mind when I read this. So take it with a grain of salt. But I do think in this case that they're so drastically different than each other that there's a big disparity there. So let me read the Mediterranean security. Score 1 victory objective if Great Britain has twice as many capital ships as the Axis in the Mediterranean and possess both Malta, Eastern Egypt, and Gibraltar.
Does it say both? Malta, Eastern Egypt, and Gibraltar?
It says both. They have to have both. So they have to have twice as many as Italy. Now, of course, Germany could contribute on some level, but let's assume it's pretty much Italy.
Both of the 3. All right.
Wait. No. Oh, and possesses both Malta. It might be just a simple typo.
Okay.
Might be. Yeah, that's probably what it is. And I'm looking at my record sheet, and I deliberately did not change the wording on any. These are cut and paste.
Right.
So I cleaned up a little bit of grammatical errors, or to make it, so maybe I don't think that might be on me. I don't know. Who cares? But score 1 big. So Great Britain has to have so. In the spectrum of possibilities here, there's a victory point for the Italians to achieve. There's where neither side achieves a victory point, and then there's where Great Britain achieves the victory point. Italy and Germany, UK or Commonwealth can contest each other and cancel each other out, or one can try to score over the other. Now, obviously, Italy's is considerably easier to achieve, and you can take it into consideration that they don't have to go anywhere from their home sea zones to achieve it.
Right.
So it's not just easier; it's way easier. Britain has to build ships up at their shipyards in the United Kingdom or down in Anzac because there's or Canada. There is no closer territory where they can build major shipyards. So they have to ship in. They have to ship in their ships. They have to bring in all their ships to be able to contest it, and double whatever the Italians put. All the Italians have to do is build 2 more battleships, and now the Allies have to have 6 capital ships minimum to get that, and they have to hold those 3 territories. Now,
but the counter argument to that is that the Italians could be negated a lot easier too, because you could have any battleships of the USA and the British to negate the Italians. So theirs is easier to disable theirs, right?
No, and you're right, but again, this is decisions that players have to make. But at the end of the day, when you look at Italy not going to war, it's still considerably easier for them to achieve without firing a shot, without putting themselves in any risk, and still having to draw a large amount of resources from the Allies to challenge that.
I mean, what I would do as Italy is wait until you're 4 turns away from starting to roll the dice. 3 turns away from starting to roll the dice, and then be like, I'm gonna lay down 5 battleships because I got all this money saved up. And then the British player's like, I don't have money saved up. There's no way I could compete with that. I'm hooped, right? And they have to basically give up or start putting everything that they have into doing it, and that means there's an absence of anything on the Western front. So anyways, sorry.
No, that's right. And it's good you got to make both arguments, and you got to look at the spectrum of possibilities here when you're talking about this sort of thing. So I still think though that the entire design favors Italy.
Oh yeah.
And then again, even at the last turn of the game, let's say Italy just goes and takes Malta for shits and giggles. The British can get in enough ships to contest that point, but they can't take Malta back.
Right. Right.
Now they have no chance of scoring that victory point,
Yeah,
and it's
that's right.
really easy for the Italians to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus it's really difficult for the British to score that victory point.
Yeah. No,
To score their equivalent victory point.
Yeah.
So it's easier for Italy. So if you look at it like a 100-point spread, it's about 40%. 40% in favor of Italy, basically just getting that point. About maybe 50% of chance of it being neutral for both sides, and then only about a 10%, maybe 20% chance that the British are going to be able to score that point.
Yeah.
Do you understand the kind of how I'm kind of trying to explain it there? That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
So yeah. Is there anything else you want to add about that one?
No, I think that's good.
Now the last one is the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, we've kind of dealt with that one, I think.
Well,
sorry, no, I guess we haven't.
No, we've talked about it extensively,
Yeah.
but we haven't explicitly offered a kind of like, okay, how would we
Solution
like?
to it,
Here's a possible solution. There's a whole wide possibility of solutions. So with that one, I think it is perfectly reasonable to say that at the end, regardless of scenario, whether it's the 1936 or the 1939 scenario, Spain has to have all 6 of its or
even 5 of the 6.
I think all 6. I honestly think all 6. All 6 of its original land territories in the Iberian Peninsula.
The thing, I'm okay with that, but the problem is there too. You could have last-minute ditch efforts when, if people aren't playing with the variable ending, be like, okay, last minute, I'm the USA player. I'm the last person to go. I'm gonna do this massive invasion of Leon Castile, capture it, done. Leave straight from American waters off of New York. Boom, boom, boom. Drop in Leon Castile, done. Just like that, right? So you can game the system a little bit, right?
Yeah, a lot of these victory conditions.
Well, yeah, that's true.
I mean, across the board, regardless of what we're talking about.
But
no, that's a good point. And maybe it should just be 5, or maybe it should just be Madrid. They have to hold Madrid.
Or that, yeah.
And if they don't hold Madrid. Now, and I think this actually creates an interesting conundrum for the German player. If that's the way it's worded.
Right.
Then the German player is like, okay, well, how much do I want to continue? Because, and let's look at Crimson Tide. Yeah. The German player won it fairly early in the game compared to what it could have been.
Yeah.
But they did not win it with a ton of guys left over. And they did make a kind of, risky attack there at the end that was not a sure victory for them. They could have taken a lot more heavy casualties and they could have lost. They could have had to fall back. Now, if they had to fall back from that, well, then you're looking at a Spanish Civil War, because now they have to rebuild those units.
Right.
Now maybe the Lend-Lease starts coming in from the other guys where they're like, oh, let's really extend this now.
Yeah.
But now that puts the German player in okay, I really need the nationalists to win heavy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I run the risk of either the Allies paying the $10 penalty and then just invading Spain and taking and challenging Madrid. So I need guys to help defend Madrid from the get-go, because I ain't going to have a chance to do much down there. One. So that, or if they really want to align it later, and they're really going to go ahead and align it, and it gives them more reason to align it, to be honest.
That's right.
I feel if it's written that way, because then if they align it, sure, it's a more area to defend, but it's also now you can calculate the defense better.
That's right.
And you can start reinforcing it better.
That's true.
From the Madrid factory.
Yeah.
So it actually, I think, would create a more interesting and dynamic situation for the German player to have to calculate for and really think about how they're going to conduct the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I think that would be a better way right there if you just reworded it that way. And I never ever think that either side should have free victory points.
Yeah.
Now once you score this, nobody can challenge it. I really don't care for that.
Yeah, me too. I think you need to be at war, I think, exactly. You have to be at some point, but in not just one turn of war. It has to be like multiple turns of war where things, your opponent has a chance to respond and the dust needs to settle a little bit before you count the victory points. Yeah.
Especially because of the fact that you can play an entire game with America never entering the war.
Yeah, exactly. That's a fair point. Yeah.
That is a possibility.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's I mean, the fact that it can happen means it does happen, because even if there's a bell curve there, there's those extremes where it's going to happen.
That's right.
And that's not fun for the players playing the game.
Yeah. Well, I think as a general
consider.
Yeah, I think as a general principle, a lot of things that a lot of so tech is another one. Well, this is going into side tangent, but it's completely feasible that you'll never get the techs that you started rolling for at the very start of the game. It's completely a possibility. I think that should be eliminated too. Same thing with other aspects too, but that goes into a different tangent at this point.
Yeah, and actually, I would like to do a video kind of talking about technology in general. So I think that's another topic for another day. And I think, and explicitly, we should talk about the Russian and the American victory condition.
Right. In regards to tech. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I wanted to cover some thoughts in regards to Italy. So you know how I have for the summer offensive, like the ribbons. You probably see them behind me right here, how me and Panzer King put together a ribbon system set up for depending on who you play, like prestige awards and such. So I set up something like that for Italy in regards to to get prestige points and such, prestige stars essentially. And there were stuff like win the Ethiopian War, send a volunteer corps to about 4 units to nationalist Spain. But some of the other ones are a little bit more complex. I think could be worthwhile for considering as victory points, right? And they're based upon like historical scenarios or historical plans and objectives and war plans and dictatorial speeches that were said, like stuff like the walls of the Mediterranean. Mussolini at one point said, we need to break the walls of the Mediterranean. We're being walled in into our prison cell. We need to capture Gibraltar and Eastern Egypt. And he would speak about, we need to break the prison bars by capturing all the little islands in the Mediterranean, like, Crete, Malta, Cyprus, and Corsica. Capture these two because he saw that they were encircled by these islands of, Cyprus, Crete, and the rest. He felt like we need to do this. And I think those would be kind of viable, decent victory points as well, because they're historical. They had some sort of perceived objective towards the Italian people at the time. It resonated with the people to some level, and it just makes sense, right? And so there's a wealth of different victory points that people can introduce into the game or change what they have existing here. I think either way works out okay.
That touches on another topic, which, the things that were historic, like Malta was incredibly important.
Oh yeah.
The war overall, but not in Global War 36.
No.
It's almost irrelevant.
Basically.
It's mentioned in two nations victory points for 1 point, and then that's it. Beyond that, it's irrelevant. It really has almost no impact. So that's another thing that from a design perspective maybe needs to be looked at. But that's a whole nother discussion. What you were saying, I understand what you're saying, but it does kind of open up a whole nother possibility of discussion for various aspects of the game.
Yeah, basically like by structuring the victory points to be kind of historically resonating with what historically was the ambitions of the people there, then that would kind of make sense, right? But hopefully, I think the rumors I've heard is that they're going to restructure the whole victory system, which is going to be nice if it ends up being true.
Well, at this point, I mean, I know obviously at some point version 4 will come out, whether it's going to be 2 years or 6 months, 6 years, who knows? I'm not going to wait though. We're going to kind of move forward with things as they are and kind of talk about things as they are. And potential and the great things we love about the game and the things that frustrate us with the game, because nothing is perfect. And so here we are.
But it's getting to the point for me. So again, this is getting off topic, but it's getting to me is like, I think I might start introducing house rules. If I end up playing version 3 again, I'd be like, guys, depending on what kind of game it is, but guys, can we restructure this at least slightly a little bit so that we avoid some of these more obvious issues that have developed when the meta of the game kind of develops, right? So it'd be nice to streamline something, and maybe that would improve the game and enjoyment for everybody.
Yeah, that's always a possibility. Always a possibility. So, okay, is there anything? I think we've covered all the points you wanted to make about this particular topic, in Italy and its play style and its victory conditions, and where we think there are problems with it, and potential, potential ways to fix it.
Yeah, I think so.
Is there anything else that you think we should cover or needed to be added that we didn't discuss?
No, I mean, I would like to see North Africa in a more prominent theater of war for the Italians. Right now, it seems to be generally like you kind of give up on it. I mean, okay, aside from the meta of just not going to war whatsoever, but even if Italy was in war, it'd be nice if Italy had a bit more, there was a bit more to Northern Africa than there is currently. What are your thoughts on that one?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Some of those Mediterranean islands, which really aren't that important overall in the game right now, maybe need to they need to be. There needs to be some level of importance attached to them in some way, somehow.
Yeah. And maybe there needs to be a feature for the Italians to get units to North Africa without using transports. I mean, okay, that's one thing I stand by quite solidly. I think there should be a means of strategically naval moving without actually using transports.
You can ask Panzer King how I feel about that one. Now that I'm playing the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So
but that would make North
those
Africa
those are discussions for
those
other,
those are something else. Yeah. Okay, I think that covers everything.
Okay, awesome. And this is going up on your channel, so look forward to see it there.
Yep.
And yeah, so tell us what you think in the comments below. Taking into account everything we've said, and understand, making sure that you are going to be add something constructive to the discussion.
And taking to the consideration of the spirit in which we're sharing this. We're not sharing it in an overly critical manner where we're trying to tear it apart, but we're trying to talking about something that we both.
Well, if you think there's a problem and you never say anything about it, and everybody else thinks it's great, but there is really a problem, then nothing ever moves forward. And again, I always reserve the right to be wrong.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. Maybe somebody will come at me with a completely logical, well-reasoned way of kind of presenting things that I will ultimately go, okay.
Yeah. Yep,
and I've said it on my own channel numerous times. You know what? I was wrong about that.
Yeah.
I've changed my opinion on this.
Yeah.
This is different, or whatever the case is.
That's right.
I reserve that right as a thinking, critical thinking, sentient being to do that.
No, excellent.
Okay, I think
I will talk to you later on.
Cool. All
Cheers.
right, bud.
Okay,
Later.
bye.